welcome to the Animal Training Academy Making Ripples podcast show, the show where we share the stories of the ripple-making extraordinaires with behavior nerd superpowers who make up the Animal Training Academy membership. I'm your host and one of the happiness engineers at Animal Training Academy, Shelley Wood from Drop Your Jaws Dog Training in Cape Girardeau, Missouri in the United States. We're absolutely thrilled and grateful to have you here with us today. Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss a single episode. This show is brought to you on behalf of the Animal Training Academy membership. So if you like the conversations in these episodes, then we want to invite you to continue them with like-minded people in the ATA membership, which you can find out more about at www.atamember.com. Within the membership, you can get access to twice monthly live web classes, the back catalog of previous web class replays, plus a huge library of videos and projects to help you problem solve your training challenges. And we're a sociable bunch with an exclusive private Facebook group and forums area. It's like a Netflix social media platform for animal behavior geeks. Today it is my pleasure to welcome Caroline Howlett to the show. Caroline is a pet nanny focusing on real-life skills, passionate about making safety and healthcare fun. Still with a childlike delight in the animal world, learning about and spending time with animals is always the ultimate goal. Taking part in wildlife clubs, keeping a variety of pets, and following her loving parents and brother whilst they scuba dived around the northeast of England, it also created a love of the great outdoors. After training in agricultural college, experiencing voluntary time as an exotic animal trainer, working with heavy horses and racehorses, she felt nothing quite fit. We often talk about dogs being acquired to suit your life, yet she felt she had chosen a life that was close to being perfect, yet didn't fit her ideals and goals with the animals she worked with. Running Petnanny has allowed her to find the life that fits, enjoying training a wide variety of animals and working with people to enjoy the animals they choose to spend their lives with. She lives with 3 Spanish spotted saddle horse sisters, 2 we just discussed this a minute ago as well, but is it Ibizan?
Ibizan hounds, yes.
Ibizan hounds, a lurcher, 3 feral cats, 2 rabbits, and bantams. Welcome to the show, Carolyn. It's my absolute pleasure to have you here to talk with us today.
Thank you ever so much for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. I have just loved following you in the Animal Training Academy community and on social media for a long time now. As I'm saying that, I'm having images of lots of cooperative care type things I've seen you highlight with animals you've worked with over the years, as well as beautiful jaunts through the great outdoors with lots of animals. And recently, I saw some really cool, not sure if it was a horse or a pony at a wedding that you...
Oh, yes, a horse and a donkey.
Yeah. So I know you just do some really wonderful, fun things, and I'm anxious to talk to you about some of those today. Could you get us started out a little bit today by telling us what being a pet nanny looks like and a little bit about how you spend your days with animals these days?
I think I was lucky when I started Petnanny, which is a lot of people would class me as a dog walker. Because I had nobody to follow, I naturally started to try things, see how the progressed and see what worked for me. I really have a problem with timing, so I really worry about having dogs wait too long. So I tried to work on a system that allowed me to have the dogs with me, which meant they could toilet. Because obviously after you've taken them for a walk, they're getting watered, and then I was worried about the dogs then going home and needing a toilet again after them having a good drink. And then I also found, because my customers work very hard, often full-time jobs, it was nice for me to do some healthcare. So I got trained by my vet, who was very helpful, did basic healthcare like nails in order to save the customers having to book appointments to take them to the vet. So that also naturally evolved. And because I was brought up with a very good Labrador. She was fantastic with everything and everybody. But our next dog was a German Shepherd Cross Labrador, and she was overreactive to pretty much everything. So, that was in the 1980s. Dogs were allowed to be dogs to a degree. If there was a nasty dog down the street, you just avoided it. But we found that because she overreacted to pretty much everything, it became really a negative experience for us to meet other dogs. And I think because of that, I was very, very aware of ensuring that the dogs that were in my care out walking weren't giving that person and that other dog the same experience. So I've worked very hard. When you're walking with the dogs or working with the animals, you're training them anyway. So it allowed me to choose what I was training them to do, which obviously was with traditional methods because it's the only way I knew how. And over the time, it has progressed to using more positive methods, using the social interaction with the other dogs. If I'm walking for trained dogs that understand what I require of them and what gets them the reward of running, I find then introducing a new dog or a puppy much easier because they will generally copy not just the bad things, but the good things. So that's basically, I start in the morning very early. I pick up the dogs, which again, I use a van. And because the dogs are getting into the van and sharing a van space, that all caged out, because they're sharing a van space and I'm getting in and out of the van to pick up dogs, I find that it allows them to understand that you leaving isn't a huge issue. It allows them to spend other time with other dogs without necessarily interacting with them. And just learning to settle before the walk. Simple things like ensuring when I get them out that they're calm, they understand what they can do in order to get out the van to have their fun. And it evolved bit by bit where every step, so simply taking them out of the house, I can set it up that they're learning something. And to get in the van, they're learning something, and then they're travelling in the van and they're learning whilst they're in the van. Once they come out the van, they're once again learning. Now, obviously, some of the dogs initially can't go in the van. It's too much for them. It would be too much to expect. So they'll get visits. But it actually rarely happens. It's surprising how rarely it does happen that they struggle because you accommodate them depending on their needs.
That is great. How many dogs do you walk at a time, and how long are they usually on a walk for?
Generally, I have 6 dogs. It's very much dependent on your insurance and the area that you walk in. So I'm in the northeast of England. We are so fortunate. We have off-lead trails. We're an old mining area. We have a lot of old railways, which have been turned into footpaths. We have farmland, which we can walk off-lead, which we're very, very fortunate. I have my own field, so I have an 8-acre field, which is fantastic for doing training and to prepare the dogs for going out. And also if I'm not on the top of my game, which sometimes I'm not. So often I'll take out 6 of, say, 5 dogs that are well trained and a dog that is intermediate, that probably needs to be managed well. Some walks, so for one of the walks, I take a Doberman out called Ember, and she doesn't like the wind turbine. So I have to take out a very specific group of dogs because if I take out very lively dogs, she's quite happy, she's distracted, and she will play. If I took her out with the quiet dogs that she hasn't quite as much interaction with, she would have to stay on the leader. So if it's young pups, it could be 1 or 2 dogs. If it's teenagers, the delight of teenagers, it could be 2 or 3, or it could be 6. It purely depends on the environment, the weather, how long I go out for. I have what I call the little people, the delicates. They can go out, if it's raining, it could be 10 minutes, but they'll get 10 minutes at the beginning, they'll get 10 minutes a little bit later, which again is the advantage of my system, and they can get out 10 minutes later. Generally, they are out for an hour. I just walk a lot slower. And we do a lot of sniffing and searching and interaction.
It sounds like sometimes, or a lot of times, and maybe I have this wrong, I'm not sure. I'll just ask. Do the dogs tend to go out mostly with the same groups of other dogs? Like, do you have dogs like on Monday, it's usually this group, and on Tuesday, it's usually this group sort of thing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, we do. I definitely do have dogs that go out on certain days. I have everyday dogs. I have 3 days a week, 2 days a week, etc. I do try and mix it up. I do expect all the dogs to have a broad range experience. So the large dogs have to go out with the little dogs, because how else are they going to learn how to walk nicely with little dogs? And vice versa, the little dogs can be really worried about big, boisterous dogs. So if I can mix and match them, but do it sensitively, so it never puts them under pressure, I find that works really well. I'm very careful with the dachshund, because obviously by nature she's delicate and she doesn't feel she's delicate. So I will be careful who she goes out with. And I have some who are just a little bit full on, and naturally their play style will be a little bit unsettling or irritating for another. Quite often the collies will go out together, and that's because their play style is very, very particular for them. They all enjoy that, but they go out very, very well with the Doberman, the Labradors and the Vizsla. It just depends, but every dog goes out with every other dog at some point in time.
That's very interesting, and really impressive to hear how thoughtful you are about making sure that all the dogs do interact with all the other dogs, but doing it in a way that sets everybody up for success. So that's really, really neat to hear about. And I'm incredibly jealous that you live somewhere where there are all of these off-leash opportunities. We spoke about this a little bit the last time that we spoke, but that's wonderful. And 8 acres of your own fields that the animals can enjoy themselves in. That is really, really a great setup there, or it sounds like it to me.
Yeah,
anyway.
And I've very much kept it as a grazing field with rough areas and wildlife going in, because it is a grazing field. That's its predominant use. I use it as an extra. I walk around there, I use it. But for me, the advantage is it is a grazing field. It does have rough areas. It has a woodland at the bottom. There's a stream at the bottom that is a beautiful copper colour. So I do an awful lot of practicing with the dogs not going in there, because they come out a rather gorgeous copper colour. It's safe for the dogs. It's just they come out filthy. So we do a lot of practice there, yeah.
I loved hearing you talk too about the training learning happening all the time. I don't remember exactly how you put it, but we can have a training session with our dogs or with the dogs in our lives sometimes. And we think that is quote unquote training, but that really learning is happening all the time. And it's important to think about that. And I love the way that you kind of walked us through thinking about the dogs are learning how to get in the van, how to settle in the van, how to be settled before they start their walk together. And then they're learning during the walk. What are some things? So it sounds like the dogs are learning all the time and have learned lots, and you've given us kind of a little bit of a snapshot of that. But I would love to hear, what are some big things that you have learned through the dogs over the years? Because I'm going to assume you're learning all the time as well.
Yeah, I think that has been a massive, massive learning curve. It's just notice everything. They're noticing the environment, they're noticing what you're doing, they're noticing what the other dogs are doing. There is no such thing as going for a walk and relaxing. I have to know where everybody is at any given time. All the different dogs have all different needs. So with Ember, as I said, with the windmill, and then we have, say, the dogs who have prey drive, I have to watch them. It's just so all-encompassing. There is not one thing. One of the simple things which I always find so interesting, with dogs that go off lead, you have a clip leader and you have that trigger clip on the end. How many dogs, when you just take that trigger clip off the collar, that is the signal to run. And that's one of the first things I teach, that sound means nothing. It might be an antecedent towards, it might be something that suggests they may get off, but simply training them that sound of being released isn't their release. Same as opening a door, the van doors being open, all of these little things seem so unimportant to us because we're busy doing our human things. However, to the dogs, it's just so important. And you have to be so consistent, which in your job, I don't do 5 days a week now. I do 4 days a week. So 4 days a week for 12 hours a day, I have to be very consistent with that. It's hard. It's hard. And they'll show me when I'm not doing it, sadly.
I'm sure they will. But yeah, that's great. Some great lessons there as far as consistency and teaching the dogs that certain things that could be antecedents to you're getting to run free now are what did you say, that they mean nothing? You know, the click means nothing. The opening of the van means nothing, so that they don't become predictors of take off now. Like I have this picture in my head of a dog who might think that it does mean something. I can see them like frolicking through the field, just taking off. So very smart to teach them that it means nothing. And I'm sure that's something that they have taught you over the years.
Absolutely.
So you work 4 days a week, 12 hours a day, I think you said. So that's doing your pet nanny work, correct?
Yeah, and it's because I do a lot of traveling. So I no longer live close to the area that I work. That has been actually helpful for me because it's allowed me to say no a lot easier. So, which is obviously very important. I also am an artist, so it allows me the time when I'm drawing. It allows me the time to do me drawing as well. It also just allows me to still feel enthusiastic about training my own animals because it is a physically demanding job. So it's nice to have that time where I feel physically capable of spending time with my own animals and also doing the drawing. It all intermingles and it all works very well when I get the balance right, which isn't always.
And could you tell us a little bit about your artwork? What kinds of things do you draw? And how long have you been drawing?
I use coloured pencil, which is always a medium that tends to make people smile. And I love when I show them, a bit like not saying I'm a trainer. I found it very, very difficult to say I was an artist. I draw, but I find terms like that quite difficult. I don't identify with these things as a rule. So I use coloured pencil. I love showing people me drawings and they'll go, you do that. And that is one of my favourite responses. Quite often people will wonder why I'm not an artist and still do the dogs. But physically for me, mentally for me, I'm better being out, moving and going. The artwork tends to be animals, surprise, surprise, quite often dogs, horses, cats. I've done show cattle, a bit of everything really. At the moment, funnily enough, one of those moments where a dog had been off for a year and she saw the van door opening as an antecedent, the van cage, and unfortunately jumped out and dislocated my finger. And I had to put the finger back in. So unfortunately at the moment, drawing is a bit of a no-no. I can't draw because I rest on that finger. So at the moment I'm doing, I think it's called pyrography. I can't say it very well, which is basically using a burning tool on wood. And I'm really enjoying that. And funnily enough, I'm drawing a lot more people with this tool because I haven't given myself that label of not being able to draw people very well like I have done with coloured pencil. And I've learned to draw people, but I don't feel it's my naturally comfortable, safe spot to draw. Whereas with the burning the wood, I've enjoyed playing and having no pressure and not feeling like it's just another job to do. So I've really enjoyed that. So I've really enjoyed doing something different. And I've been doing it quite well since middle 20s, but I've been drawing all of my life, just drawing away. And I think that's the thing with pencils. I haven't progressed, as people would say, to painting, etc. I find the stick with the wobbly bit on the end, the paintbrush doesn't work for me. I like it to be solid all the way through. So,
and I've seen some of your artwork or some of your drawings, and they're really amazing. I think you do really great work. I'm curious if you have thoughts on, and I really like this too, the way that you said this, but I'm curious if you have thoughts on the why behind you don't like the idea of labeling yourself as a trainer or an artist, but rather somebody who trains sometimes, somebody who does training, somebody who does draw, that sort of thing. Do you have any thoughts on the why behind that, maybe?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I think I've never truly felt like I've fit in, and I'm not saying that as a negative. So in the horsey world, I don't particularly fit in. I wouldn't class myself as a doggy person. And when I meet artists who I truly admire, like I do with a lot of horse people and a lot of dog people, again, I don't feel like that label, we talk about labels, I don't feel like I identify with that label. I am just me. I sit literally, I find it very hard to call myself an artist when I sit on the settee with my dogs beside us, watching or rather listening to telly and drawing. In my head, an artist sits in the studio, paints on an easel and talks in a very artful way and can promote their artwork. For me, it's as much about the process and just sitting quietly. And much is the same with my hobby of swimming. I tried social swimming and it's not for me. For me, swimming is immersing myself in water, and I don't need to compete with myself. I don't need to compete with anything. I just swim. It's one of the few moments my brain stops and just swim and watch the water and watch the light and feel the sensation, which is usually absolutely freezing in the northeast of England. So I think it's the same with the trainer. For me, I was brought up thinking a dog trainer or an animal trainer, a little bit different with the animal trainer, but with the dog trainer, that is a person who runs classes or trains the person how to train the dog. I don't do that. I train the dogs as part of being a carer for them. It's also intermingled. How can I take that apart from that? It's all just mixed up as to who I am.
Thank you for answering that. And I love your answer. I think that one of the reasons I really liked it when you said it to begin with, that you don't identify as the labels necessarily, but more just talk about the experience or say, I draw or I train or that kind of thing. I think that one of the reasons I really liked it to begin with is because I think that sometimes labels, and we talk about this in training a lot with animals, that if we put a label on them, that sometimes that kind of puts them in a box, so to speak. And then what we see is that label. So if I were to say, I am an artist, which I am not, but if I were to say something like that, I might have an idea in my head of what an artist is. And so now I have said, I am this thing, and then I'm trying to live that out and be that thing rather than doing exactly what you're talking about and focusing on the experience and the process. And that all seems to me to, I don't know if you read in the Animal Training Academy community recently, the Mindset book by Carol DeWick that we all read, but your way of approaching this seems to me to be a very growth mindset kind of orientation. By focusing on the process, you're able to then just keep growing and trying new things and doing different things rather than by living out a label, if that makes sense at all. That's
yes, absolutely. I get overwhelmed very easily, which is why I don't train classes or with people. I get very overwhelmed with people because I feel such a sense of responsibility. And I think everything that I do, I feel a very overwhelming sense of responsibility. And by focusing on right now and what I'm doing, it allows me to work better and work more efficiently. And I can always review it afterwards, which of course I do because I'm an overthinker, but I can review it and it's not affecting what I'm doing right now. I often have to do something, I mentor for people, and I've been very, very lucky to have some really special people who there's no point mentoring somebody who doesn't work the same way or isn't willing to put what you say into practice, because then you both are going to feel very, very frustrated. And I've mentored some mostly ladies, lovely ladies who have put a lot into practice and are going to fly with it and do very, very well. And quite often, if I get overwhelmed, I'll often say, sometimes you just have to be a lamppost. If a dog is on a lamppost, they don't tend to fight the lamppost. we can very easily get into a mindset that we're feeling overwhelmed, and we've got 3 teenagers on the left-hand side trying to chat up the girls on the right-hand side, or trying to sniff, which is absolutely fine, but not if your arms are going in opposite direction. And in order to deal with it, quite often you just have to stand and be a lamppost. Empty your head, stop thinking, allow them to have their time, because sometimes they're feeling the same, but we expect them to behave better than sometimes we do. So it's just have a moment, stand still, and I think that's what can happen. That works for me anyway, being a lamppost.
I will remember that. Be a lamppost. I think it could come in handy for me with the dogs in my own life sometimes, probably. Did you say, how long have you been a pet nanny for?
Coming up 24 years.
Wow. Are there some favorite moments that stand out to you, whether they be like favorite learning moments of your own or of the animals you've worked with, or just 1 or 2 memories that really kind of stick out to you over those last 23 years, 24 years?
Wow. It's just so many, and they're so different. I have had some really funny ones with clients, but I don't know whether they're appropriate for this podcast, so that'll probably be a different conversation. Actually, what's really surprised me, and this is, even saying it out loud is quite surprising, I am amazed at how invested I am in the people. I got in it for the dogs, and I absolutely love the dogs, but I'm really invested in the people, because I start off, for example, with Cisco's miniature poodles family. They were going out when I met them. They then got married, and they've had 2 children, and they're now on to Lilo, who is a standard poodle. And I've seen a lot of their lives. They've had tragedy in their lives, and I've been on the peripheral trying to help with that. And I think, much as I can give thousands and thousands of stories with the dogs, I think that's one that surprised me the most. And I think I've been so grateful for that. There's been some tragedies, and there's been some wonderful moments. And I think that's really struck me. It's really quite amazing to be a part of that, albeit on the sidelines, and that's the best way to be. But you can't, for a lot of people, if you're walking the same dog for the whole of their lives, you can't help but be involved in their life in a small way. And some customers really do invite you into their lives, and some customers don't, and that's absolutely fine. But for all this is an animal training podcast, for me, I have to say that's been the most amazing part. And the people I've worked with, I've had some really wonderful mentors. So I had a lady who, she's called Jenny Adams. She's a trainer, and she's been so patient, because I was training traditionally, and I'd said I want to start working positively, and I want to work in it. She came out with us, and she still checks me work. And I have another lady called Holly Garson. She is an exotic animal trainer, and she gets paid to come and tell me to stop dropping food and be more clear in my training. And having people like that involved and come along and put me right is also amazing, because I love sharing that part of my life. And them seeing what I do allows me to see it with fresh eyes. And, you know, Jenny, I turned up with me lurcher, with me blusher brush, because I didn't have a target stick, and it worked for him. And over the years, I have learned to do a lot more positively. And when I have gaps in my training, which I absolutely do, I am not, I definitely do the least intrusive, and I try very hard, but there are times where I am stuck. And having these people like Alexandra, she from Synchro Dog, she does the same. She's also an Animal Training Academy member, or has been, and having that help is, again, it's life affirming, because I can see what I do through their eyes, because they can advise me and they can help me and channel me the right way when I get stuck.
That is a beautiful answer. Thank you so much for tolerating my question, which that's the kind of question that would throw me for a loop, probably. What's your favorite kind of anything, or a really great memory or something like that? But that's an absolutely beautiful answer. And I think that one thing I really admire, or of the people who I really admire in the animal training world, I would say a common denominator among those people is their compassion and empathy for the humans who they work with, as well as the animals or the non-human animals, of course, but the human factor too. So I really loved hearing you talk about some of the people. I think it's so
relevant now. It's so relevant now. And I think it is so easy. You know, we've all been in those conversations, or probably hopefully viewing those conversations where an animal's been hurt, you know, from a person training, and the conversations in the comments of these social media posts, they're so aggressive towards the people. And actually, this is something I find I feel very strongly about. We've done posters about dogs not rushing up. So we have a lot of off-lead walking, as you know, and we have a lot of dogs that rush up to my dogs and other people's dogs. And I think it's all very well putting out posters and advising people that they shouldn't allow their dogs to run up at other dogs. But these people don't know how to not let the dogs do it. They don't know how to. And we'll go back to the conversations in the forums and on our private group where you are literally saying, try to be kind, try to see what the problem is. And the problem is these people don't understand how to, and making them feel bad and making the situation more difficult. I genuinely feel that our role as dog handlers, dog owners, is we know that is going to be part of the environment. We set up the environment, and we have to accept there are going to be these incidents and moments. So in America, I know there's a lot of problems with invisible electric fences. We know it's going to happen. So we have to make sure that our side of the equation is set up as well as we can possibly set up, and not rely on this external factor where they can't do it. Some people definitely can, but the majority of people who are allowing that to happen, it's not through ignorance and not knowing they shouldn't. It's not knowing how to put it right. And because I'm out and about doing it all the time, absolutely make mistakes. You know, I have, you know, the dogs that stand in the middle going, sorry, Nanny, it's got to be done. I need to go and say hello to that dog. But it can be done. And a lot of us have real challenges with our own dogs or with the dogs that we walk. But it's the environment that we're living in. We have to set up the antecedents to cope. And even if it can be, I would really appreciate if you could help with this, or you make sure that you do everything you can to block that dog. I would just like to clarify, I'm not talking about victims of real dog attacks, so nasty dog attacks where there was injuries or could have potentially been injuries. Those victims, there are times where you can't do anything. There is nothing that you can prepare for or train for or do anything that is going to change that outcome. And I think many of these people would already be thinking that. And that is something that I really would like to clarify. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about over-friendly dogs that rush up to you, that are very rude, that want to say hello or be pushy or a little bit over the top. And it's something that I think we can train for. Real, genuine labelling. Aggressive attacks, I think, are an entirely different subject. If I can block, you know, I have the 6 dogs, I have a video of 6 dogs, not one of them is absolutely steady, rock solid. And I had 6 dogs come at me, 5 dogs, sorry, and I had to manage those dogs. It's just, it wasn't an if, a possible or maybe. In order to stop something really bad happening, it had to be done. And I think we can take responsibility and just be a bit more kind and understand that these people can't do it.
Such an excellent point and a good example as far as the off-leash dog thing. I know that as you were talking, I'm thinking of a lot more examples as well of things that people are just passionate about. We really believe that certain things are the best things for dogs or the best things for animals in our life, you know. And so sometimes we put messages out there, just like you said with the off-leash thing, like don't do X, Y, Z or do X, Y, Z. but not recognizing that if people don't have the skills to do those things with animals in their lives or to make those things happen, that it's possibly just going to be very aversive to the person, make them feel bad about themselves, make them kind of shut off to the messaging, shooting ourselves in the foot for what we're hoping to do. So excellent point. Thank you so much. And I have just taken us down a whole a rabbit hole, a whole bunch of different little side streets and a new little rabbit hole here. But I want to make sure that we have time to get to some of the wonderful training examples that you have to share with us. So let's go ahead and move on to the next question, which is, I would love it if you could share with us a recent training related challenge that you've worked through and just tell us a little bit about that challenge and what you've learned from it.
So this one's a very, very tough one for me. Again, back to being a human and a delicate human. I have labelled myself as being non-academic. I really struggle to be in a learning situation. So I learn all the time. I try to study. I try to learn as much as I possibly can. I check my work. So I book people to check my work, no matter how embarrassing and frustrating it can be. I video myself constantly. Thank you, Ryan. I have learned to do that. However, going to a classroom, I even feel now being able to say my name. So going to a dressage test, say my name out loud. To go into a classroom, say my name out loud. To be tested is very difficult. So I thought, right, I can set myself up for small little tasks. So I did a couple of little online certification, not important for the job. It's not relevant. It was just to try. I then also took a few days off with the support of my customers, went down and did some work with a tutor who said I need to stop thinking and just writing. So I worked hard on that. And then there is a City and Guilds dog walking proficiency. Now, I'm fairly proficient with my dog walking. I understand the laws, the legalities, my requirements with data protection, all of that. So I thought, right, that's a good one to go to. I wasn't going to tell anybody that I did the job because that would have put too much pressure on myself. And I went in the classroom and she asked for my name and I think I can't do it. And thankfully she had a beautiful Rottweiler who was just happened to be with her. And every time I got stressed, he came over and put his head on my lap. So I could fill up at the thought of that glorious dog. And I managed to say my name and I actually told the truth and said what I did. And everybody else was working in some sort of childcare or similar. And I was, I think, one of only 3 that had actually had experience of dog walking. And I managed. You know, I learned a lot about myself, probably more than anything. I learned a lot about that dog who was absolutely fantastic for me. And I said to his mum that he made it for me. He made it possible. I took the test and it was all good. And the next day, the lecturer asked me if I would do a little talk and answer questions because of doing the job for so long. And I managed to do it because I did ask them to ask me questions rather than just ask me to talk. I found it a lot easier. And I passed and I really enjoyed it. And it's not particularly relevant or important to my job, but it was such a big step. But I still find it incredibly hard. So I think probably I do so much training with the animals. I have so many dogs at work. I have so many animals at home. I give myself so many projects. But the truth be known, that was the biggest project for me. And it's going to be ongoing and probably lifelong.
Well, you answered my question just now by saying it's going to be ongoing and probably lifelong. I was wondering if you planned to intentionally keep doing this sort of thing. It sounds like you do. Awesome. And you are also going to intentionally keep videoing your amazing training and sharing it with us in the Animal Training Academy community, thanks to Ryan's influence, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
I hope to continue seeing that. Well, thank you. I love that example. What about a story? Do you have a story about a behavior that you have trained or a training situation that you are either proud of or that you found reinforcing?
I think this is where I have to bring Bathtub into the situation. So Bathtub was a very, very aggressive feral cat that turned up at me horse barn. So I have a barn. It's literally a broken down barn. It's rented. And I seem to be between points where stray cats, feral cats come by my barn. So I leave food out for the hedgehogs and for the cats. And every time I manage to see a cat, I trap it and either return it to its owner or neuter it and release it or rehome it. So Bathtub turned up. And at first I didn't realise he was there. The horses weren't going in the barn. And Ella, the mare that I got first, she loves our barn. It's her thing, and she wouldn't go in the barn. And I found out one day by trying to go in the barn, and this black and white tomcat came at me, hell for leather, and promptly removed me from the barn. So I was a bit stuck as to what I was going to do because I couldn't go in the barn to actually set up the trap, but I managed to go in when he wasn't there and was feeding him because he still needed feeding. And the feral cat that was present there, which is a little queen called Button, I just don't see her. I have to put the wildlife camera up, the remote camera to find her. So I just check her by checking the camera. And bit by bit, I noticed he was hanging around a little bit more. And then one day he was sitting and meowling at me while I was mucking out. And I thought it was a bit odd. And I could hear him wheezing. And then as time went on, about 2 or 3 days later, he walked up to us and touched us on the leg. Now, I have to admit, I levitated because this is the cat who had put holes in me. And cats hurt. So, but no, this beautiful boy was being very, very sweet. And about 3 hours later collapsed. So very carefully picked him up, rushed him to the vet, warning them that if he came round, we were probably going to be in trouble. And he has been an absolute treasure ever since. From that day on, since giving him all the treatment, working with him, he has taught me so much. He has taught me to stop being so handsy. I should ask before I touch him. I should, allow him to live his life. So it's been hugely rewarding, terribly frustrating. And I adore that cat. He makes me worry every day. And he still has health problems, which leads me to, I trained him to give a voluntary temperature check. Because one of his first symptoms, obviously he's a village cat, he wanders around the village, he doesn't sleep at the barn. The two queens often do, but he doesn't. And therefore I can't check what his toileting's like, I can't check how he's doing. I occasionally can see hot pads on the stone floor. So the easiest way is to check his temperature, because when he's got a water infection, which is what his allergies start off with, is a water infection, is temperature. He's a feral cat. So I can't just go over, grab him and pop a thermometer in his bottom. So as time went on, I decided this is what I was going to do. He's very, very tolerant. He makes me very clear in my training. He trains me beautifully to be concise. And if he doesn't want to do something, he leaves the room. He's very like me dogs. There is no persuading or discussing. It's this is correct or I have left the room. So I trained him to first station, be handled. And I did really have to think it through, because obviously it looks beautiful if you can just do a voluntary rectal thermometer check. However, if he jumped or moved, because he is feral, if he hears something that's going to risk his life, he will move very quickly. So I had to also include a hold, because I have to hold him in order to keep him safe. And I've just, I would say, finished that now, although it's ongoing. And I think that's probably the one I'm proudest of, purely because I just want to pick him up, hug him and squeeze him, and be the child that used to pick up cats and take them home and go, this is now ours. And the same with all wildlife. And he has been fundamental in changing my attitude about where my hands should go, which is keep them to myself.
How did he get his name?
I looked for months to see where he was. I looked in the hay bales, I looked all over, and I had an old bathtub upstairs. And the first time I ever saw him where he didn't run away before I saw where he was asleep in the bathtub.
It sounds like Bathtub has taught you some really, really meaningful lessons. And I love to hear them. I think that a lot of us, I know myself, and I'm guessing probably a lot of the listeners can relate to, ooh, there's a cute cuddly animal. I want to touch it or pick it up, but it's so important to remember to ask for permission. So it sounds like Bathtub has been a great teacher in that regard.
He certainly has.
So before we wrap up today, I wonder if you could share with everybody how they can find you, how they can find your Petnanny service, if you have information out there about your drawing that people could find, or just how folks could get in touch with you.
I do have a website. Unfortunately, for the foreseeable, full with Petnanny, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it. I'm full with training, etc., because I am trying to prioritise my animals. We've got 2 young puppies. So Bruce, my partner, has a lurcher puppy, and I've just 2 days ago acquired my new Abethan Hound puppy. So I am prioritising them at the moment. So with the artwork again, I can't draw much because of me recovering dislocated finger. So I am on Facebook as Caroline Howlett Animal Artist page, and also Petnanny, established 1998. They're probably the ones if you want to see me training. I've got the cows on there. I helped with a farmer who had collapsed whilst he was working with the cows whilst we were helping. And since then, I have helped to get the cows a little bit more settled and more easier handled, so that he doesn't put himself under pressure. So a lot of the training I will put on there if people want to see. And also on my profile, I usually put training on there.
Did you just say that your puppy, you just brought it home 2 days ago?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. How exciting.
He's just adorable.
Does he have a name yet?
He does. He's called Alateo, which rather funnily means flutter or flaps. So I find that quite amusing. He is really a sight to be seen. Abethan Hounds are something else anyway. Everybody thinks they're terribly elegant, but if you spend much time with them, they also spend an awful lot of time being clowns, and you spend a lot of time laughing at them. And because he's a wire, it's a bit like if an Egyptian dog is being hit by the Fraggle stick. So I nickname him the Fraggle because he just looks like a Fraggle, and he is a beautiful, beautiful boy. He has an awful lot to learn, as do I. And Flute, bless him, my 11-year-old Abethan Hound, is taking it very well, having 2 under 6-month-old puppies with him.
Right. So how old is your partner's puppy?
6 months, just coming up 6 months.
Oh, wow. So what are some of your, if I can ask before we go, now I have a bunch more questions for you, but I'll try to limit them. What are some of your top learning priorities for those puppies?
Well, for the first time ever, so Flute was a real challenge. I had Flute and Tipsy. Unfortunately, I lost Tips last year. And they're not interested in food. They're not interested in toys. They want to catch bunnies. They want to catch bunnies. They want to catch hares. They want to catch deer. They want to catch foxes. And probably badgers, but badgers can be a bit scary. Now, obviously, they're not allowed to do these things, but this is what they want to do. So I foolishly asked the breeder, because I bought him from a breeder rather than a rescue, I asked him if I could have a greedy puppy. And his response was, he is a glutton. But I didn't actually think it through, because these dogs were about 27 to 29 inches at the shoulder. And he really, really loves food. And I've had lurchers who take it or leave it, like food, it's no biggie. And I literally can't put my fork to my mouth without him helping me. Now, great for my diet, that's fantastic. However, that's my first priority. So I've been just doing some simple luring with him because he can't control his limbs at the moment, so he can't go through doorways without hitting back end or front end or ears or tail on them, and just simply showing him some food and showing him where the food is going to turn up. So a little bit about restraint around food, but it's not really restraint, he's just learning how he's going to get the food. Valentino, the lurcher, he's not great at being left. He gets really quite worried. He's quite a vocal lurcher again, which is very new for us. We usually have quiet dogs. I phoned the breeder up again and said, I think you've sent me a beagle lurcher, because he literally sounds like a beagle. So that's been a process. So again, you learn every time. But I'm quite excited about having a greedy Ibizan hound. But after having 2 Ibizan hounds, I have absolutely no goals whatsoever other than being a partnership, because there is no point, because they are wonderful at leaving the room. If you make the wrong choice, they're gone.
I cannot wait to watch your puppies growing up and learn from you all as you learn together. And I think it's really interesting hearing what some of your top priorities are, having just had, well, I think he's still a puppy. He's approximately 1.5 years, but he's going to be a puppy for a while. Having just had a new puppy in the home, it's really interesting to me to see how my priorities of things that I want to focus on training have kind of changed with each puppy that I bring into the home. Do you feel that way too? That
you definitely evolve. You have to evolve. You can have a really fixed plan, but I don't choose dogs that fawn after me and hang on me every word. You know, their priority is absolutely not me, and it's up to me to train that into them and encourage it. And they're very, very loving. People don't think a lot of the sight hounds and the Ibizan hounds aren't really sight hounds. They're sight hounds, scent hounds, and hearing hounds. But it's just this dismissal of you. You know, you can't have an ego around an Ibizan hound because it just gets shot away. So I've really genuinely just learned, if I can have a relationship like I've had with Flute and Tips, albeit different, I'll be really happy. But I would also like to see if my skills have progressed somewhat and see if I can entertain them a little bit more so that they aren't required to entertain themselves quite as much.
I can certainly understand that. Well, again, I'm really excited to learn from you and these new puppies, and to continue to learn from Flute and some of the other animals who are in your care when you are serving as their pet nanny, both on your own Facebook page and in the Animal Training Academy community. We will, of course, link to all of those links that you mentioned before for how people can get in contact with you. Those will be written out as well in the show notes. Do you maybe want to just, since we usually end with that, do you maybe just want to say what those are again real quick?
My business website is Petnanny, established 1998.co.uk. The Petnanny, established 1998, is my Facebook page, and for my artwork, it's Caroline Howlett, Animal Artist.
Thank you for sharing those with us again, and thank you for your time today, for this lovely conversation. On behalf of myself and everybody listening today, we really appreciate spending this time with you. So thank you, Caroline.
Thank you, and I have to admit I am completely overwhelmed to have been asked. And I hope I've explained what I do and at least provide some entertainment.
I have thoroughly enjoyed talking with you, and I'm sure that the listeners will really enjoy learning from you today. So thank you for saying yes when you were asked. I've been wanting to chat with you for a while, so I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do, of course, appreciate all of you tuning in as well. And if you have enjoyed this episode and are interested in carrying on the conversation about working with the animals in our lives in the most positive, most fun, and most choice-rich ways, then as mentioned at the start of this episode, the Animal Training Academy community is waiting for you. Head on over to www.atamember.com and click on the membership button in the main menu to learn more about what members are describing as the Netflix social media platform for behavior geeks. That's it for this episode, though. Thank you so much for listening. You'll hear from us again soon.